And I want to highlight one thing that probably we're mentioning, but for some friends around, for friends out there, is not very common, and it's that the question of if I have a Bible study, if I'm doing any kind of program, how can I morph that, if we can put in those words, in the module of a small group? And one of the first steps that I will consider, or the challenge to do, is take it outside the church, the core. Mm-hmm. I mean, that it seems like a small step, but it brings a different environment, and that facilitates that will promote those aspects of feeling comfortable, feeling open, and in a more relaxed environment. And one of the things that we tend to be is very centralized. So it needs to happen at the church building, which is not really. It could happen at a park. It could happen at a home. And as I've seen in other experiences, it could happen at the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. I like that.
Well, that's actually the portability principle.
Yeah.
that we've talked about portability. That how do you know when what you have is not just a program, but it's actually a group? And it's that question of portability. If it goes and tries to meet somewhere where it's not used to meeting, is it intact? And are they able to function as a unit outside of wherever they are used to meeting, especially if its meeting is normally in the church building? Are they able to function outside of that? Or does it completely disintegrate? And that's, one of the, key differences. In the Salvation Army, we have a structure that has a lot of programs. We do a lot of things with different ages, different interest groups and everything. I'd like to even push further, not just how do you make a small group, or how do you make a Bible study emphasize more small group sorts of concerns and values, but how do you take a program like Corps Cadets or Home League or something like that? How do you model traditional Salvation Army programs, or what sorts of increments are there that we can actually reasonably step forward and nudge things toward a small group culture? Awkward.
I would jump in, but I don't know half the words you said. So
a little word salad for everybody.
I think in the Salvation Army, we have this mindset that we need to complete. So, for example, junior soldiers, Corps Cadets, they're all supposed to complete a certain amount of lessons each year. Junior soldiers, Girl Guards, Sunbeams, Adventure Corps, all of those programs have a specific, like they're badge focused in our troops programs. Our junior soldiers, you're supposed to complete so many units a year. Even Sunday school, I feel like our new orange curriculum that we've gotten for the territory, you're supposed to complete a certain lesson every week. I think sometimes if we could just simply take the time factor off of ourselves and sit back and relax into the actual material and look at it and find out, like, what is it that my people, our people, that we actually need. I think then we can begin to kind of wrestle with, how do I actually make this look a little bit more discipleship based as opposed to program driven, or statistics driven, or numbers driven, or whatever it is that we feel like we have to meet. Like, we always have these certain requirements we have to meet, but I feel like sometimes if we could just kind of take a step back and go, well, what do my people need first? Even though this material has been given to me that I have to teach, if I can kind of out of this material find the pieces, you know what I mean, that my people actually, then I can.
So you don't throw it away.
No,
you don't throw away the material, but you yeah,
you incorporate it because it's good stuff. Like the Salvation Army curriculum is all beautiful stuff. You know what I mean? But I think that we have to, I think we're just trying to get through, get done.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? As opposed to just kind of going, well, what can my kids really take home with them this week that is actually going to help transform their lives?
And what I would say in regards to that is that we have, I mean, the resources are excellent, good quality, and that's a plus of what we have. Generally. But we fall into, yes, the means becoming the purpose.
Yeah.
So we need to do this curriculum. But one of the key things that I've learned is in that transition from program to group life, one of the key aspects is the purposes. There's people that have 5 purposes. Steve Gladen knows them. And if you have those 5 purposes, and if you plan your meetings around those purposes, I guess it gives a different life to the group. As the group goes together and serves, as the group gets together in prayer and in worship, as the group do the curriculum, and as the group goes out to reach out for new people. Yeah.
But you guys have been talking.
One more thing to add there, Steve?
Yeah, I was going to say you're talking about you guys were giving specific aspects to your cores and that, but it's the balance of information and transformation. It's like, when do we move from so much content coming into, whether it's children or adults? How do we see some transformation happening where that information is taking that 18 inches going from your head to your heart? And as we all know, everybody learns differently. And that's the beauty of groups, because when you're relationally built together, you can know who needs to throttle up or who's just saying all the right language, but they flip somebody off in the parking lot of the Salvation Army. Or something like that. You're able to give that checks and balances. So it's that tension where groups are more of an art than it is a science. It's not just a plug and play.
Yeah, and I would just plug, to use that word again, I would just plug the Saddleback resources. One component is just a voluntary statement. I really believe in these resources because one component of them is there's this group accountability through a spiritual life assessment, where you don't just assess yourselves, but people in the group actually have input in that. You pair up, and you can do it in different ways, but you can pair up and have input and hold each other accountable in a real kind of concrete way, to make it so that we're not just accountable to receive the information or even to deliver the information, but we're also accountable for the life change that takes place. I want to bring up one person who's viewing is asking this question: how do you start a small group in a new congregation that you're just getting to know? So you're fresh in the congregation, or perhaps the minister or the core officer is new, and you're not really anchored in there, perhaps, but how do you, start that group? And I want to thank Celeste Pagan for bringing that question for us.
Start building relationships. If you're new, get to know the people, build the relationship with the core officer, the pastor, and from that, start throwing out the idea of having a group, of meeting, a Bible study, or whatever other program it's around. And incorporate those purposes so it takes off.
Yeah, I would I think there's 2 aspects that you got to look at first, and one is that core officer on board with this or not on board with this. Mm-hmm. So you may have the passion, but you've got to go with the lead of where that, if I got the language right, the core officer is at, who's leading that core. If they're not on board with it, it's a matter of, what Daniel's talking about is having that relationship with them to find out, how do you want to see discipleship played out? Because the real nuts and bolts comes down to how are we taking people from, hearing these weekend messages to actually, making them happen in their day-to-day lifestyle between the weekends. If the person is on board, then I think you can start working out some tactical steps to say, off a sermon series or off a tactical time of, how do we plan to start a small group ministry? How do we want to jump into that? There's on my websites, smallgroups.net/free. I have about 300 downloads, but there's a whole folder on starting a small group ministry that can, help, give you some, 10 steps that we can't go through here. But aligning with that core officer is going to be critical to making sure, the whole unit is in a line and going that direction.
Now, Joy, would you like to add anything about what do you do to if you're kind of there and you want to start small group or get involved?
I do think that your core officer is your best resource, especially if you're a lay person. I don't meet a lot of core officers who are like, no, absolutely, we don't want any small groups in our church. That's not been my experience. There have been people who have said to me that has been their experience. I have not encountered it yet. And I don't know a lot of core officers who would say, no, thank you, we don't need your help. So generally, I think if you approach your core officer with the right mindset and attitude and say, hey, I'd really like to see a small group start, they would probably say to you, yes. And they may do one of two things, I think. They would either say, let's make that happen together, or they may say to you, I don't have the time or the resources, go ahead. Usually, so go ahead.
Yeah. Give you a blessing.
Yeah.
And then I think it's all about the invitation, the way we invite people in, the way we say to people, please come be a part of this. I think when we open ourselves up and make ourselves transparent enough for people to go, yeah, I want to be a part of that, then I think people, because people are hungry. That's the thing. Yeah. People are hungry for the word. People are hungry for more of the Spirit. People are hungry for more knowledge. So it's just about the invitation, I think.
Yeah. That's good. And to think also the word small, I think, is really important in the word small groups. Often people talk about, we had this rinky-dink little group and they focus on the size. They think that small is bad, but actually small is good for the sake of small groups. Yeah. Once your group becomes too large, people can't stay connected to each other, and you lose the very purpose that you were connecting to each other for. And so, look, grab a friend, grab 2 friends, grab 3 friends. Ideally, you want it to have, to be large enough to be stable. So 4 people, because 4 people can sit across from each other. Yeah. But, you want to have just a handful of friends. And if those handful of friends can say, look, let's help each other stay accountable. Let's do this. But I hear from each one of you, it's important to recognize the spiritual leadership of the pastor and to be a participant and to realize my pastor, I may not agree with them on everything, or they might not be on board, or they might be ambivalent about some things that I care about, but they are my ally when it comes to my spiritual growth, when it comes to discipleship. And I want to recognize that and let give the Spirit the best chance to have the Spirit's way in this situation.